Suffering a cyber attack can cost organisations millions and sometimes bring companies to their knees. So how can they prepare and ensure that it won't damage their business? Well, I'm joined today by Mark Weil, CEO for the UK and Ireland of the world's leading insurance broker Marsh, to discuss how insuring against cyber attacks can tell you a lot about how prepared you are for a breach. I'm Sarah Lockett. Welcome to the Business Debate. Mark, welcome to the London Stock Exchange studios.
It's great to be here, thank you.
If we look at the process of insuring against a cyber attack, what can that teach organisations about how prepared they are or aren't?
Well, it's a great question because it's the signal value of insurance, your ability to get insured, how much you pay compared to other firms, the lessons from the kind of claims, attacks that they've seen as an insurer that I think can be really important to you, not the process of transferring the risk to a third party.
So the analogy, I guess, if your premium is really high, you think, right, I'm not really prepared enough.
It's certainly a leading indicator. So if your chairman, CEO and your security team are saying everything's fine, but then you discover you're paying 3 times the amount of competitors paying for your insurance, that tells you something, and that ought to lead to some difficult questions for your team.
And you take your clients through a diagnostic of what could go wrong. How does that benefit them?
Well, insurance involves somebody betting money on your security, and so they're going to want some comfort that it's been looked at thoroughly. So we have a process which is there to say, for this particular firm, what could go wrong? How bad could it be? How well prepared are you so that if it does go wrong, you minimize the impact? And then finally, where does insurance fit in? How will it respond, and is it appropriate to your particular needs?
And after that diagnostic process, you put a value on their risk. Now, how easy or difficult is that to do?
Well, it's getting easier, in some ways regrettably, because of course we've seen more and more cyber attacks get through, so we've got a growing body of cases to look at. But we've also got lots of parallels. Cyber is just a label for the conduit of things that can happen. You know, crime, fraud have happened for a long time. So if invoices are being hacked into, well, we know what the value of the invoice is, we can quantify the risk. So there are methodologies to try and bound the kind of worst case scenario for cyber attacks of different sorts.
And then taking all those factors into account, what are you actually covering for?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things that you can cover for. Again, it comes back to the specifics. So we know of clients who are very concerned by reputation, by the interruption to their business, by the loss of data. A lot of regulation introduces sanctions for data breach, or indeed for fraud in the form of, finance function, the basic business of being paid and paying customers being hacked into. So many different types of risk and different forms of cover to go with those.
And one of the challenges that you have is the lack of understanding of cybercrime at board level. What would you say about that?
Well, I think that's fair, and I will say I think many people in the cyber sector have slightly relied on that to obscure the issue with jargon and with complex sort of phraseology. But in fact, cyber is just in the end a risk. It's an operational risk. It manifests in the way of crime, business interruption, in ways that many board members are familiar with. So we've got a plan which we put together, 10 points, written in plain English, designed to give the board simple questions they can use to really probe how well the team are on top of the risk. You
mentioned that 10-point plan. What would you say are maybe the most important things?
Well, a couple of things to note in there that I think really matter. One is, I think, to have really got a grasp of how bad it could be, because as a board your duty of care is to make sure the business can continue through a crisis, to quantify the nature of the problem that you face, and secondly, plan for a breach, prepare. So much work gets done that assumes that you can have perfect defense, and that obviously really matters, but you also need to be thinking, if it did happen, are we scripted, are we prepared, do people know what they do the minute, the hour, the day it happens?
Now, you said in the past that, say, a big retailer wouldn't even bother insuring for a risk up to £1 billion, which is an enormous amount of money. Why not?
Well, it's worth saying for very large firms, it takes a lot of loss to really move the needle on their profit and loss. So, they think of it in terms of a risk transfer, then it takes a lot. But I will say, I think that slightly misses the signal value of what insurance brings that we started with, which is if you can get insurance and you're paying a low price, you're aware, you're made safe by the knowledge that you're relatively well prepared for the risk.
Great. On that note, Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
And join us next time when we'll be talking about the latest innovations in vaccines and in global food security.